Okay, now you can see if you chisel off enough right there, eliminate enough, your tongues and grooves should be perfectly matched right there. And if you got a good snug fit, you might want to get a little hammer them together, but I think we can get it right there. And there's your perfectly matching tongue and groove right there. We'll just, right there. Okay, when I got that perfectly lined up, you can see I might have a little bit of a crack in there, see? So what I might have to do is I might have to come back in there and eliminate just a little bit of that shoulder on that tongue. So let's do that. Okay, now we're going to come into here. And now we've got that perfect fit. Okay? So make sure all four corners fit. Dry fit them all up. You've already cut the groove for the raised panel, so the next thing we're going to do now is put our OG raised panel cutter in here and make our raised panel. Okay, we've got our door put together here, and you can see how we can create some perfect miters with that sled we used earlier. It really works great. Now, what we're ready to do next is make that panel in the middle. How do we arrive at the dimensions? I'll explain how we do it. If the door is 12 inches wide, and you have 3 inches here and 3 inches here, you just take 12 minus 6, and that gives you that opening of 6 inches. But our tongue and groove joint in here, the groove is extended in at ½ inch and ½ inch on each side, so actually it's going to be 7 inches from the inside of that groove to the inside of that groove. So that's how wide our panel is, but we want to make the panel a little bit narrower, exactly 1/4 inch narrower, so it can expand and contract. So we're going to take 1/4 inch off of that 7 inches, and that gives us the final 6 3/4. Same thing goes up and down. 20 inches minus 3, 20 minus 6 is 14. Add the 1 inch there, you'll get 15, but we're going to back off 1/4, 14 3/4. Another way you can do it, let's say if you use something that's 3 1/4 or 3 1/2 out here, just your opening inside here, you can just measure your opening and add 3/4 inch, and that'll work also. Okay, so we've arrived at the size of our panel. Now, we're ready to start machining that panel with our raised panel cutter. Now, a lot of guys, when they're doing this, will make that raised panel stick proud, okay? They might like to do that. You can see how we got the panel on this one here sticking proud. See, it's not flush with our stiles and rails. On all of our other doors, we always make them flush because they're flat surfaces, and you can sand that whole door with a random orbital sander or run them through a big wide belt if you want. But with this door, since you can't sand this anyway, we might as well stick that panel proud. That's the way I like to do it anyway. So we're going to stick our panel cutter in there accordingly. Here's our panel cutter, and the panel cutters come with a big bearing and a small bearing. We're going to install, it comes with a big bearing on it. So take the big bearing off, install the small bearing. The big bearing is for when you're doing arch doors only. Okay, so we got this OG cutter set in our router, and we like to use the OG. You can use any panel cutter you want, the OG or the Cove. With this fancy door we're making here, a lot of people like to use the OG cutter. Snug this up a little bit tighter to get started. Okay, we're snugged in and ready to go. Now, you can see I've raised that up quite a bit right there. That's where I want it. I'm going to bring my fence over. Drops into my pivot point, and right there's my bearing. Right there. Okay, that's going to be my final pass. I want to make this in 2 passes, so I'm going to bring that fence out just a little bit right at the panel cutter. Maybe a little bit. I'm just going to have that panel cutter make a little bit of a cut for my first pass. And remember, when we make our panel cuts, always again, good side down, we do the in grain with the grain, in grain with the grain. Always want to finish up going with the grain. Okay, we're going to slow the speed of that router down here first. I know we're on the high speed end there. our push block. Okay, there's our first cut, right there. And actually, if you got that panel cutter just barely hitting the back and not showing on the back, it makes a nice drawer front, you know, matching drawer front. But we're going to move it back now and hit that small bearing and make our second pass to make our panel. Right there's our small bearing, lock it in, we'll do the same thing over again. Okay, there's our finished raised panel. Now we're going to go get that mitered stile and rail and show you how we install the two. Okay, here's our stiles and rails right here. And you can see we're going to put these together like this. And we're going to stick our panel in here and glue it up. Now, before we do that, we use these little panel line strips. And what these panel line strips do, they allow, we're going to stick 2 of them in each stile and 2 of them in each of the rails, okay? And what they do is they allow that panel to expand and contract evenly and always keeps the panel centered right in the middle, okay? So I wouldn't make a door without these, personally myself. Okay, and we need them on the 2 stiles for expansion and contraction this way. The reason we're putting them on the top and the bottom is wood cannot expand this way, but we put them on the top and the bottom and make this smaller just so we have the same reveal all the way around the door. Okay, we're ready to take it and stick that panel in there now. And when you're actually gluing this up, I'm doing a dry clamp here. When you're actually gluing this up, when you glue these now, what you want to do is put some glue on the back of that tongue, on the tongue, and a little bit on the front. And you can put in the groove on the back. Be careful when you're putting that groove on this top edge right in here, because it's really difficult when these come together to get glue out of that rounded area there. So, we're going to come into here, and we're going to put this, simulate, this is going into our clamps right now. Okay. When you take that thing into your clamps and you start clamping those joints together like that, okay, you want to have 2 clamps going here and 2 clamps going here. And you just keep tweaking those clamps both ways until all 4 corners are perfectly matched. And when you do, you're going to arrive at a door like this. It's going to fit perfect, right like that. Some guys like to keep that door just like that with that nice square edge. Me personally, I like to put a little round over bit and radius that edge after the door is glued up and sanded. So I'll show you next how we're going to radius that outside edge. Okay, we're ready to take and put that radius around the outside edge here now. And what looks good is a 1/4 inch radius right here. Okay, if I stick this bit into my router right where the radius hits like it's going to be, I'm not going to get much of a cut because remember I have that panel there sticking proud. You can even see on my table of rock here. You know, so if I have about 1/8 inch right here on this bottom edge right here approximately, I'm going to have to move that bit up, and so I have a little bit of that straight part of that round over coming up about 1/8 inch. So you got to allow for that cut. So we're going to bring it up about right in there. We should get a good radius. And you can see now that you can bring it over here, and I might be able to tweak that thing just a little bit more so that my round over is hitting right there. Okay, so we've got that round over bit set to the correct height now. put our insert ring in, and we'll be ready to cut that radius. Fence is in my pivot point. There's my straight edge on my bearing, and we're ready to take and cut. And when you do this, remember, you don't want to, be careful, don't let this thing rock. Just put all the pressure right on that raised panel, and you can make your cut. Right there, you can see how nice that looks with that little radius on there. Really dresses that door up. All right, the last thing we're going to show you now is how we're going to install our 35mm hinges on the back. We'll do that next with our hinge jig. Okay, our door now, we're ready to drill the hinges. When we do that, what we're going to do is use our easy bore jig right here. Okay, you can see it's got 3 drill bits in it. A 35mm and 2 8mm bits. All you do is clamp that on the back of your door. Okay? Now I want it to be flush. I just use this little yellow portion out here, flush with the edge of my door, and I'll clamp it down right like that. Okay? Now, we have 2 little stops on the front here. And these 2 little stops right here, you can preset them for any margin of overlay. When we have them set on the number 2, that's for a 1/2 inch overlay. You turn them over to 3 and you got 3/8 inch overlay. So, and I always use 1/2 inch overlay. It's a lot easier for figuring and everything. We clamp it down with our 2 cam clamps and make sure you're tight here, lined up correctly here. We're ready to drill the holes for our hinges. And it comes with a socket. You just come over to here and drill the 8mm. They're spring loaded, automatically preset. The middle one is preset for our hinges, but you can adjust it. Our hinges are 7/16. You can see how quickly accurately you can drill the holes with this jig. It's a lifesaver. And installing that now, like I said, our hinge cups are only 7/16. You can adjust this stop collar, or these set screws right here, whatever you want to call them. You can adjust them down if you want a deeper hole, but I like the 7/16 deep hinges. All right, all you do now is just taking the hinges. You can see you have these little nylon inserts. They're ribbed, and once you got them lined up, just take slight blows on the hammer and your hinge is installed that quick and easy. Okay, all ready to go. Now you can stain and spray the door. You can take those hinges off when you stain and spray and screw it right back on as many times as you want. So they're very easy way of installing the hinges on your doors with this. So we're going to go ahead and drill the other holes on the other side here. Clamp it down again. Drill the holes. This saves a ton of time when you're installing hinges right there. Okay, and these are hinges made for face frame construction, which we predominantly use in our shop. All right, one last thing we can do this door now is we can drill the holes for our hardware, and we'll show you, we have a little jig to do that for you too. Okay, we're ready to put the hardware on, and I just put a little dot where I want the one hole to be, okay? And what we have to do is we have this little jig right here. It's called the Easy Marc. It aligns your holes just perfectly for it. All the way into the inside here, you are on 3-inch centers, okay? And that's what hardware we're going to use, a little piece of hardware 3-inch. On a door like this, you can't get that big heavy hardware because you're on a radius here. You know, you want that setting right there in the middle, like that. All right. Now, with that jig, we got it set for the 3 inches. Okay, this is a stop. That stop, since we're lining up on this side, I'm going to move that stop to the other side, okay? Right, like this. Okay. Now, what we have to do, you can see the stop on the back where I'm sitting right there on the back, okay? What I have to do now is visually line it up with that mark I have. So I'm right in the center. And what I'm doing there is sliding this stop right here, my hole, where I drill my holes, so I'm lined up right where I want to go. And you might want to do some test holes for this to begin with. All right, I'm going to drill the first hole right there. So I'm going to put my stop right here. So if I do a bunch of doors now, I know right where to put that on, right there. Come right up to that stop, and all my doors are identically set, okay? All right, this system here, this little jig comes with a 6-inch aircraft drill. And these are hardened bushings. You're not going to wear them out. We'll just drill right down through. And that easily and accurately, you just drill all your holes for your hardware. A lot of guys sit up on a drill press or anything, but this can be done after your doors are installed, and you know now that that hardware is going to be lined up just perfectly right where you want it. All right, our door is ready to stain and spray, and you're ready to start installing. I've enjoyed working with you today, and I hope you enjoy building your new mitered raised panel door.